right after I just partied with Keith and Ronnie intimately, where we had great conversations while we're slugging a bottle of Jack Daniels together on a drum riser. It hits me like, wait a minute. I am not going to listen to anybody else. I got to listen to the heartstrings that are vibrating inside my soul.
We're totally booked.
Rock and roll!
Well, I think I'll leave you to your reading.
Little Hand says it's time to rock and roll.
Rock and roller!
We are totally booked.
Welcome back to Booked on Rock, the podcast for those about to read and rock. I'm Eric Senich. Before we get started, get 15% off classic rock merchandise at oldglory.com. Just use the code BookedOnRock, the link in the show notes, or at bookedonrock.com under my deals. So check that out. But right now, we're going to check out a great book by Richard Lefkowitz. He is the author of Welcome to Fabulous Angeles, the rock and roll adventures of a wayward West Side teen. Richard is an attorney, a writer, an educator, and a lifelong music fan. Richard, welcome to Booked on Rock.
Thank you very much, Eric. I appreciate you having me. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be here.
All right. You are from the West Coast. I see you got a Dodgers shirt on there.
I do.
Cool.
I don't like to throw it in anybody's face, but I just happen to have this nice little LA World Champion back-to-back Dodger shirt. So kind of goes with the Fabulous Angeles philosophy.
Yeah. Well, for those who haven't picked up the book yet, how would you describe Welcome to Fabulous Angeles?
Well, it's a time capsule. It's the rock and roll adventures of a restless teen searching for some type of validation and fulfillment in the insane 1970s.
And the book opens with one of the most unbelievable scenes imaginable. Two teenagers finding themselves in a hotel suite with Mick Jagger and members of the Rolling Stones entourage. Why did you choose to open with that story?
The funny thing is, it wasn't that unbelievable because we've been doing it since we were little kids, and we walked into the Whiskey A Go-Go when we were 14 in 1971, and just, it would never occur to me and my pal Moxie to go through the front. We just went through the back stairs, and voila, B.B. King is sitting there ready for a show, and he was the most welcoming, gracious, warm host to two interlopers. And by the time we stumbled into the Westwood Marquis Hotel in Westwood Village when the Stones were on their 78 tour, we were 21. So we just expected almost as a birthright, because we just, our credo, as one of the chapters is named, is we just act like you own the place. Because we really did believe, Eric, in the grand scheme of things, in the cosmos, we sort of did own everything, but not in a malicious way. We were only there to be friendly and have that experience. So, our biggest agenda was just the cool thing of meeting people and interacting with them as equals. And so it was a fun time. And this is the way we escaped from our parental prisons. There were various iterations, but what I realized, and it closes with a Rolling Stone story as well, with personal up front and close with Keith in rehearsals for the New Barbarians the following year. So it's a full circle cycle there. So it just made sense. It was inherent to the work. I hate to sound like some, stuffy artist, but some artiste, but it just worked that way best. It opens with Mick and closes with Keith.
Moxie, one of the most memorable characters in the book. You mentioned him. Tell us about him, and what was it about him that made you follow him into so many adventures, despite knowing trouble usually wasn't far behind?
Well, the best thing about Moxie is he wasn't me. And so I was restrained and kind of inhibited, and I met Moxie, and he just blew the doors. His family dynamics, as I portray in the book, were very different than mine. His parents were going through divorce. My parents were very close. But they both came out of the Depression, and they couldn't understand our generation. Back then, Eric, and you're not old enough to remember, but we had this huge thing called a generation gap. So we could not relate. I have a daughter who's going to be 30 next year. And we saw Justin Bieber 3 or 4 times. We saw Hilary Duff at the Greek Theater. I mean, we went to shows. It was fun, but that didn't happen. No, my parents did not go see Led Zeppelin with me
Right
at the Forum. And that's a whole other discussion about what concerts were like back then and the culture. So with Moxie, it was a release. It was a relief. Somebody who got me, I got him, and we could just escape together to just do things that we were told we could never do.
Talk about the first time you met him.
At school. We were in elementary school, and we were just on the blacktop, and we went to see my mom, of all people, sing in the Canfield Elementary School choir. And we were just cracking ourselves up because of a bunch of mamas singing, belting out whatever the heck show tunes they were doing. It was just funny to us. And we just immediately had that bond. And of course, we were always in trouble. And I was always in trouble for seeing him. And I was banished from seeing him because they used to say, when you two get together, you don't have any guardrails, you just do crazy things. But see, like I said, the best thing is he wasn't me. I wasn't him. He would go into a market and he taught me about the 5-finger discount. You buy lettuce, why would you buy one head when you can cram 4 in and they never notice the difference?
Right.
Or certain things may just find your way into your pocket. And to me, that was exciting. And was it wrong? Sure. Am I proud of it? Not necessarily, but it's the truth. And that was my mission statement, to just tell the truth.
One of the themes I noticed is that Los Angeles isn't just a backdrop, it's practically a character in the book. What made 1970s Los Angeles uniquely suited to these kinds of adventures?
Volumes have been written on that. It's a great question, Eric. And of course, could be a comprehensive answer. So LA, it's been disparaged so much. I just really felt it in me to kind of tell the truth about it. It was really like a lot of people from all over the world come and leave and they can't fulfill their dream and they blame the city. But LA was growing and going through its adolescent expansion at the same time as we were. So we grew at the same time. So you're right. It is probably the major character. My mother, me, Moxie, the girl, the love interest, first girlfriend. But the city is the backdrop, and the city is what really formed us. It was in our chemistry. It's in our DNA. I was born on the Sunset Strip, but it technically wasn't a strip. It was further down by Vermont Avenue. So, it was a mile off the strip, but on Sunset Boulevard. So I felt like this is something I just needed to say and needed to do because people needed to learn that LA is like a small town that there's nowhere to eat after 10 o'clock. It's not all the plastic people are not from LA. The people who grew up in LA are very much down to earth, kind of small townish. But it is very true what Frank Lloyd Wright said about if you take a map of the country and you tilt it to one side, all the loose nuts and bolts end up in LA. That's a fact. But that's part of what the American dream and all the spiritual new age philosophy, especially in the 70s when that was a big deal, expressed through the music and the culture and the big radio stations with big audiences, all that stuff. Like I said, you could give a long answer to what made LA special, but I think what people don't really realize is it's like a small town in sense of character of the people who grew up there.
Let's talk a little bit more about the Sunset Strip. Based on chapter 6, Come Fly With Me, it's not just a location, it's part of the freedom and the adventure that defined your teenage years. The Sunset Strip has become legendary music history, but for you, it wasn't history, it was your backyard. Did you realize at the time that you were living through a special moment, or did that only become clear to you years later looking back?
Both. It crystallized later and yearned to be heard. But Sunset Strip is the kind of place where you just go up to one of the club called the Roxy and find a member of the Rolling Stones standing there with a bottle of champagne in his hand, Ronnie Wood, and hand it to me and give it to me. Of course, that went on my Technics receiver for the rest of my life. What a cherished memento. Ronnie Wood gave me a bottle of champagne. Or like I said, walk in on BB King. We walked at the Roxy. We went and saw Muddy Waters. It was really easy just to walk up the stairs backstage and go say hi to Muddy. And Pinetop Perkins is warm-hearted piano player. And I had a picture of Muddy in there. And in the picture, there was this guy named Shaky Jake. And I was reading an article about the new book on the Stones that's coming out because there's a launch at Bookstore tomorrow night. And I was reading about Shaky Jake Harris, a blues guy who was in England when he influential on the Stones. And he's up there backstage with Muddy Waters. And we just walk in. And that's the kind of place the Strip was. But the center of the Sunset Strip then was, and I still miss it. The Strip is there, the Roxy's there, the Whiskey's there, the Rainbow, which is not the Rainbow Room. We all know that's in Manhattan, the Rainbow Bar and Grill. But the center of the Strip was Tower Records. And I was just in Japan, and there's a Tower Records there. Wow. There's not one in LA, but there's one in Tokyo. So Tower was the center because you never know who you're going to run into. A lot of musicians hung out there. And even there's a huge Guitar Center instrument shop down there now, but it's and that's good. But the guitar stores were tiny back then. Guitar Center was tiny. We didn't have Sam Ash like the East Coast, but this Tower Records was where when you didn't know what to do, and maybe you drive it around, okay, you ended up at Tower because where else are you going to go when you don't know what to do?
New release day was Tuesdays. If I recall correctly, new albums came out on Tuesday. So the line would form, right? Waiting for a new album to come out.
They had acts that would play in the parking lot. But what I remember at Tower, the yellow bag with the red writing and the big mural they're like murals. They're album covers on the side facing Sunset Strip. So if a new album, Elton John, Rock of the Westies or something, Caribou, there'd be a big mural on the side. So you would see all the new releases. And of course, Sunset Strip is spitting distance up to Hollywood Hills. And so you make a right on Doheny and you go up to Blue Jay Way, where we used to go to throw a football around, or we didn't drink back then, but we smoked a little, whatever, and look at the view. And in those days, it was unencumbered because they built a lot of houses. And of course, that achieved immortality on was that the Whiteout? No, it's on Magical Mystery Tour, Blue Jay Way, the Beatles song.
Right.
So these things were right there next to the Strip. And if you take Sunset all the way down toward the beach, about not even halfway, you get to Westwood Village, where UCLA is, and where there are all kinds of people hanging out.
Today, it's not as accessible to the rock stars, musicians. I mean, now it's heavily guarded if you wanted to try to do what you did back then, right?
It all changed on 9/11/01, and 9/11 changed everything. And of course, by then I was 44, so I wasn't exactly sneaking in places. I was married and had a 4-year-old daughter and a 1-year-old son, and by then, so I wasn't doing it anyway. But yes, it all changed. There was security, by the way, Eric. I don't want to say that there was nothing. They had those white jacket NES bouncer guys at all the concerts at the Forum, and they weren't very nice. And there was a modicum of, it required some finesse. It wasn't like you could just the Roxy, you could just sort of walk backstage. It wasn't a big deal because it's a 300-seat club. The bigger venues had security, but that was the whole fun of it. Is that, for example, the Forum, which I'm sure you've heard of in Inglewood, the fabulous Forum, was the place where all the great Zeppelin and Tull and the Who and the Stones and whoever else you want to name as portrayed in Welcome to Fabulous Angeles. But the Forum had security. You couldn't even go from wherever you're sitting up in the nosebleed because we couldn't afford the good seats down to the floor. But if you took a drink in each hand or you had some pop and you were walking and just went like that, of course you slid right down. I mean, it took a little finesse. But to answer your question, yeah, secure. But when 9/11 happened, that's it.
It changed.
It could not ever change everything.
Sure. I've heard stories of people telling me that they would bring their own guitar and carry it backstage and pretend they were with the band, and they'd let you go right in. I mean, that's the way. But
yeah, what would you do with your guitar for the rest of the show?
But you talk about a time when you're roaming hotels, television studios, concert venues. I mean, no restrictions at all. It's amazing.
Well, we went to CBS Television City, which many may know from the lead into a lot of famous shows from Television City in Hollywood. And I think Bill Maher and some other people it's still there. They built it next to what is now called the original Farmers Market. And this guy, Rick Caruso's developer, built a lot of malls, built something called the Grove that's there now. So it's huge and it's way overbuilt. Way back before my time, there was a minor league ball field there for the Hollywood All-Stars minor league club before the Dodgers even came here. So it was all small town. But when me and Moxie were taking the bus up to Television City and crashing the Carol Burnett show or Sonny and Cher, All in the Family I write about, and when Norman Lear said that show will never make it, when I asked him, that's in the book because it's too radical, these influential shows that are at this point legendary, there wasn't much going on. We just went through the loading dock.
Amazing.
Two kids are 14 years old. Who's going to bother 14-year-olds? What are we, terrorists? I mean, it didn't exist in 1971 or 2.
As somebody who grew up immersed in FM radio culture, as I did as well, what do you think the younger generations have lost by not experiencing radio the way your generation did, and mine too?
Well, it's all homogenized. everything. And it's okay because it's just a different world and there's lots of benefits to the world we're in. And I love the internet and there's lots of, we talk about all the positives, but the answer to that question is community. We had these radio stations like KMET, Counterculture Underground. There's a guy started AOR, Almorian Rock up in San Francisco. Tom Donahue and his wife Rachel brought it down here, and KMET was more than just there was lots of facets. I don't want to overstate it. They weren't my best friends, but there's nothing like getting on the freeway and just having a miserable day because your parents are just don't believe in you or don't get you or just acting irrationally because of their own suffering they're going through and have had in their childhood, whatever it may be. But you're driving and then, Mary the Burner Turner or Jim Ladd or any of these disc jockeys could feel the pulse of the city. And they played that moment because they just somehow you just knew, all of a sudden Blue Oyster Cult, I'm burning for you. It's just like somehow it just hit.
Yes.
But that was the art of the DJ that you can't get. And I've had Sirius XM since Howard moved there 20 years ago. I went crazy when I got it. Wow, this is amazing. No commercials, all this music. I'm not putting it down. But it's automated. You're not going to get, and the Tom Petty channel, there's so many good things on there. I could go on about how good it is. But the question is, what are people missing? And the answer is community, the emotion, and the spontaneity of it.
Yeah, there was a magic to radio. We all had our favorite local stations here. I'm from Connecticut. I had my stations that I would listen to. Who were your favorite DJs? And what were your favorite radio stations?
It was even more than DJs. Even the news guys were great. So I could have written a whole book about that. But the KMET was the station that went against the grain. There were two really on FM. The 94.7 was KMET, and 95.5 was KLOS. KLOS was more corporate, and they had playlists. But Jim Ladd came in and said, I'm not using a playlist. And he had no qualms about getting on the air high as a kite and just go railing against the political establishment, and half the time he made sense and half the time he didn't, and it didn't matter because at the end of the day he put In the Light on from Physical Graffiti and we all just
that's so cool
fired up together.
Yeah, you mentioned Tom Donahue. What's cool about that is there are a couple names that it was a radio station prior to the one that Tom Donahue formed in San Francisco, or maybe it was that one, but Howard Hessman later, who became Johnny Fever on KRP, worked with Tom Donahue as a DJ, and then Gottlieb, the guy who wrote the script for Jaws, and he went on to all that. He was a DJ too, and it's just fascinating that whole.
I'll tell you about Howard Hessman. So he was based on B. Mitchell Reed, and the Beamer we called him. And one day I'm going to school because was forced to go to college. I guess I could have just left the house, but that's a whole other logical analysis, right? Where am I going? Anyways, headed over, if you know LA at all, you head over the 405 into the valley to go to Cal State Northridge. And we're driving there and I'm listening to the Beamer, and I got to get a little high for a class because I hate it. What am I doing here? I'm an English major and I cut class to write. Because I'm reading Emerson and Thoreau. They're like, what are you wasting your time in the classroom? Let nature be a teacher. So I'm driving, I'm listening to B. Mitchell Reed, and I noticed they're playing a lot of Leonard Skinner in 77. And by the third song, he came back on, and B. Mitchell Reed is delivering the news about the plane crash.
October of 77.
I didn't go to school. I turned my car around, went to Moxie's, and went, oh my God, because I saw them open for the Who Quadrophenia tour, and that was 73. And so it was an onslaught of guitars. It was like, wow, because the Allman Brothers may have invented Southern rock, and the double track guitars, octaves apart, an amazing Dickie Betts Dwayne configuration, but they weren't as, cutting it. Leonard Skinner was just like 3-minute songs, boom. Freebird, of course, we heard it live when they opened for the Who at the Forum in 73 on the Quadrophenia tour. It blew our minds. And there I am listening to the Beamer, who Hessman based his Johnny Fever on. And he's telling, now what am I supposed to go to school and sit and concentrate? The whole band perished. They didn't even know at the time. And plus, news traveled slow. It wasn't like now where, I'm finding out by the time we've been talking 10 minutes, I could tell you I'd have 4 alerts about the news right on my phone. And this was the night before it happened, and the news was just breaking. So these are the kinds of things that were special in the city at the time, that some good, some not.
I love the moment in the book when you tell your mom you partied with the Stones. This is what you write. You write, quote, I stayed awake for an early dinner with my parents. I partied with the Rolling Stones until 7 this morning, you said. Mom smirked. You need to start rolling yourself into bed, not stoned at a decent hour. I shook my seat. Did you hear me? I partied with Ronnie and Keith. Mom slid her leftover salad onto my plate. That's nice, dear, but you need your sleep. What was the funniest thing that happened during that night with Keith and Ronnie that made you think, you know what, only in Los Angeles can this happen?
Well, it's just amazing how, and there was security, and I'm not going to mention names, and we did know them slightly from the year before when we partied with Mick at the Westwood Marquee. And by the way, when we were in that hotel room with Mick in 78, I wasn't putting on a show. I was quiet. I was intimidated. I mean, my God, we were just up there hanging out, and Mick comes in with Jerry Hall. And it's funny because I read an interview with Mick a few years later saying, most of the men I meet on the tours are taciturn. I had to look that word up. And taciturn exactly was what I was, withdrawn, completely intimidated. Plus, there's blow going around the room. It was 1978. That doesn't exactly calm you down. I hope you never know. It's a dreadful, devilish drug. Stay away. That's all I gotta say. But
this is during a Some Girls tour, right?
Exactly. And also it was a lot of being uptight because Keith was still on bail. They didn't know if he was going to jail for life for heroin trafficking. He been caught in Toronto. He woke up in Toronto with the Montreal, Canadian police, whatever you call people. Well, he was in Toronto though, not Montreal. And he got arrested for trafficking, and they didn't know that. So as it turned out, the Barbarians had to do a benefit for the blind. He went to rehab, and he made a good showing. And the truth is, they had some damn good lawyers, and he did not have to go to jail. But the next year, he toured with Ronnie as the New Barbarians, and to satisfy that sentence, he did a benefit for the blind. The album's out; you could stream it, and they did the rehearsals in L.A. And then you asked me what the funniest thing is. The whole thing is, it's amazing what the security guys may or may not have remembered Moxie, but he was just so full of charisma, and you just couldn't say no. That it's amazing how much just a little bit of that gets you right in the door. I don't know if that's the funniest thing. You want to know the funniest? The stories in the book is Keith told a really funny story about Mick that Keith said he used talcum powder for his hands, and he puts them on the amp during a show. And, he went back to playing. Mick came over and snorted it. He thought,
oh, my God. And they are still going at 82, 83 years old.
Yeah, but they're not doing that now. I mean, if they were, they would have.
Well, I hope not.
No, even Keith may have snorted his dad's remains as reported, but I think after he fell out of that tree, he quit all the hard stuff.
Yeah, Keith said he stopped smoking. I think he said 6 or 7 years ago, maybe longer, but he still smokes an occasional joint.
Oh, he's a total. What's not in the book is later on, and we're going now because I couldn't get the book, and it was about 2000. Right after the Stones played that huge concert in Rio, there was 500,000 people plus whatever. Moxie happened to find out that Keith was staying at the Four Seasons, and I'll say the name because they wouldn't use it again, under the name Clouseau. So he called Mr. Clouseau's room and gets Keith on the line. But Moxie can't do it as Moxie. He pretends to be Billy Preston, who we had met a couple times at the Roxy, and he's talking like Billy. And I only wish I recorded this. This went on for like at least 30, 40 minutes. And he gave a whole, and Keith was going to give tickets to us to go to the show that was coming up at the Forum.
Wow.
And I told Moxie, I said, don't take the tickets. I'm a lawyer. That's false pretense. You're pretending to be so. But we took the backstage passes because it was only free food. So it did go on, and that was post 9/11, I'm pretty sure. Just
Moxie, is that his real name? Or, I mean, because it's fitting.
I can't do it too. Most of the names are real. A couple I wanted to protect people. It was tough. I wrote it originally with all the original names. Moxie is very supportive of the project, and there's some tough stuff in there about it. It's the same with my parents. If you're looking for a whitewashed, just lighthearted romp through the woods where everything's beautiful, this ain't it. There may be a lot of that, but I had to tell the truth. And the truth is, it was a very tough time politically. It was a tough time. College, a huge generation gap. We all felt trapped in our homes. And the biggest salvation for us, other than each other, or maybe even bigger than each other, were the songs.
What made you decide to write this book now?
Well, it's like you asked before, did you know at the time? And yeah, we sort of did. Like, this is really cool. We don't know anybody else who's doing these things and getting away with this stuff and having so many laughs with so many people. And the bigger stars, the higher level stars they were, the nicer they were to us. The people at the bottom who are climbing are just trying to be known, or not that nice. But the ones at the very top are always the super nice. The mix, the Keats.
Yeah, I've heard that. In fact, I was going to ask you, between Keith and Ronnie, who was most like their public image and who surprised you the most? Or were they both? I've heard they're both cool.
I haven't met Charlie, but Mick, Keith, and Ronnie, one thing is, these guys are hilarious. They love to laugh. Mick, in a few hours I was with him, and when I see him later, ancillary or tangentially, but Keith and Ronnie we spent nights with. These guys are hilarious. They just love to laugh. But I want to answer your question, Eric.
But yes, sorry. Yeah, the question was initially, what made you decide to write the book?
I always wanted to write it, is the answer.
And finally,
these guys just love to laugh. They're hilarious. They now everybody's older now, and reality kicks in. I mean, Ronnie Wood's got a pair of twins with his new wife, and it's got to be, and these guys are in their 80s. I don't know how much laughter. It's like Don Henley said. I love the quote. He said, I had a lot more fun in the 70s when I was in my 20s than here in the 20s when I'm in my 70s. That's very true, but nevertheless, these guys, their life was a party, or was, probably still is to a large extent. They love to laugh. They have a great sense of humor.
Yeah, and they obviously still love to make music, record, and hopefully play a few shows. The Stones, they're saying there's probably the days of consistent touring are over, but doesn't mean they're not going to play live again, which is really
right.
Great.
Well, Rolling Stone today has a big article. He says they may not tour with.
Right.
But one thing people think, I've heard this my whole life. And by the way, I listened to at least the highlight of that great book that's coming out that you did with about Stevie Nicks.
Right.
Rachel Brodsky.
Brodsky, yeah.
Great. I just look forward to that.
Yeah.
Give her a plug. Why not?
Sure.
But sure, Stevie was misunderstood. The crystals and light and the dresses and the scarves. And yes, people thought she was just insane. And all I heard about the Stones is the money. They're in it for the money. How many times I hear friends or parents say that? And I knew then it was a lie, because they were artists. And they heard something we couldn't hear. It was a higher calling. To them, it was all about moving the culture and the music through the songs, depending upon who it was, forward. And it was always about the music and moving that music, and that circle of giving the music to the people and then getting the love back from the people, and just going around. And yeah, it's nice to make money. Sure. Buy 1 million copies of Welcome to Fabulous Angeles. Great. Okay. But I didn't write it. You do things. The reason you're involved in what you do, and congratulations.
100%.
Because people need to read. This is perhaps the biggest problem faced in the country, not to even start with that, or we'll be here till midnight, is that a lack of critical thinking. And people read. And I read on my phone too, and I read magazines. And I understand. I'm tired at night. I have my phone. I'm scrolling. I do the same thing. But at the end of the day, it's a whole different world on libraries and reading and educating yourself and becoming better. And it's just a different experience, whether it's the radio, whether it's books, all these things, they need to come back. And that's really why the book is Fabulous Angeles is timely now, is that what can we do? It's nice to have an exercise in nostalgia, Eric. That's great. In fact, I just read an article in the Longevity Institute from Stanford University's magazine about nostalgia is actually quite good for the brain. It's good for community, all kinds of and I never thought of nostalgia as predictably productive, but I guess it is. But forgetting all that, as nice as that may be, and it's great to have a time capsule of what happened so it's not lost. The bigger question is, how do we bring this into the present day? John Lennon said, we all want to see the plan. He was right, because the whole culture failed. The whole 70s, 60s peace and love. And I had on yesterday, what's that song? Territorial Pissings, Nirvana song.
Oh, Nirvana. What a great song. Yeah.
Great song. Great. Obviously, I was exercising.
Come on now, people. Everybody.
That's what I'm saying. They were sneering in the 90s at that peace and love and all that. But it's real. It was very real to us. And it took place in LA in the architecture called Gookie, which is the spaceships and the theme building at LAX, or the Disneyland futuristic stuff. And it's all over the city. On the Sunset Strip, it started at a place called Googie's Coffee Shop. Forgetting all that, that's not important. What's important is there was a hope and optimism, and there was a cultured community, and people thought the future would be better. And how do we get that back? And books are a big part of it. And I commend you for getting people back into reading if you can, because that's a part of it. Is it everything? No, but it's a big part of it.
It's a huge part of it.
Use our brain. God gave us this brain. Let's use it.
Yeah, I didn't realize I've been doing this for 5 years, this particular podcast. I just did it. It just felt right to do. I know the authors have all these great stories, so let's do it. No idea how many books that were coming out. And there are a lot of books that come out on a regular basis. And what's also really cool is I remember reading that there are more Barnes and Nobles popping up than ever before. And sure enough, here in Connecticut, there's a huge Barnes and Noble that just went up, brand new. And I go in there and I see young people reading through books. It's like, okay.
Or drinking coffee, but that's okay. I love that too.
Yeah, but at my full-time job, I work in the law system during the day. And we have a couple people in my office, young 20s, actually 3 of them. They have books right there on their desk, physical books on their desk. I'm like, this is great. I love this. Yeah. So it's
because we all need it. It's like music. There's terrific music out today, and it's just different when it's made by machines. We all crave. That's why I think Adele was such a big hit. It was a piano and a beautiful singer, and the songs were great because we connect with that more than bump, 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 which is good too if I want to dance. And there's a perspective there that's great for people who are younger, and that's all good. It's just it's a different thing. We crave humanity. We're community creatures, and we need that. And I think it's important to remember what happened back in the psychedelic age, as silly as it may have been, peace and love and groovy age of Aquarius. Guess what? There was a lot of truth in that. And we'd all be best advised to listen to our hearts and our minds and to what happened then. And there's not going to be another Beatles in our lifetime.
No. And I can't believe Ringo and Paul with brand new albums out, and they're great. I love it. Yeah, I was just listening to Paul's. I always try to forward to the up-tempo songs, and there's some really good stuff. Andy Watt, he does the Stones too. He's a great producer. The Stones stuff. The 2 new songs I've listened to that are part of the upcoming album and that last album are fantastic, and I love it. And
Hackney Diamonds. There's a song.
Hackney Diamonds, yeah.
What's that? The Whole Wide World is a great song.
Yes.
Mess It Up These songs are really great, but the difference is, as you well know, being in the radio business, is that when a new song came out, let's just say 1973, when House of the Holy came out, and you heard every station was playing Over the Hills and Far Away, and that's the story. We're driving down Sunset Strip back then. The Continental Hyatt House, which Cameron Crowe portrayed in Almost Famous as in his Golden God scene, was kind of similarly based, but this is a real thing that happened to me, and it's of course in the book. They actually put in big letters at the front of the building, "Welcome Led Zeppelin," and there was a huge billboard across the street for House of the Holy. The concerts were coming up, but every station was playing the Over the Hills and Far Away, and the song remains the same. And of course, what am I going to do? I'm driving down Sunset Strip in May of 1973. I see a sign, "Welcome Led Zeppelin." Am I supposed to keep driving? No, stop the car, park, go. And if you saw Almost Famous, that was a very true recreation of what that was like, except for it didn't show the part where we went up to the pool and they threw the groupies in the pool who then took their clothes off, which for a 16-year-old is pretty exciting.
Right. Find the Booked on Rock website at bookedonrock.com. There you can find all the back episodes of the show, the latest episode in video and audio, links to all of the platforms where you can listen to the podcast, plus all the social media platforms. We're on Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and X. Also, check out the Booked on Rock blog, find your local independent bookstore, find out all the latest hot rock book releases, and before you go, check out the Booked on Rock online store. Pick up some Booked on Rock merch. It's all at bookedonrock.com. That excitement, though, like you say, of a new single coming out or a new album coming out, which leads me to Van Halen, because you were there when that debut album came out in Los Angeles. And like you call it, the perfect LA album, that debut from 1978, it sounded like the car exhaust above Hollywood Boulevard pressed into vinyl. That's a great description. Yeah, I mean, what made Van Halen feel different when they arrived on the scene as opposed to like the Stones and Zeppelin? You
can count on, I know I'm preaching to the choir, you can count on one hand how many truly influential guitar players. And of course, the song, it's all about the songs to me. And the songs are great. And David Lee gets a lot of credit, maybe 50%, I don't know. But, and I know Eddie says he picked it up from Jimmy Page. He was, he didn't necessarily invent tapping, but he saw Jimmy Page doing
at
the
one Forum.
Thing.
Yeah, at the LA Forum.
I was probably next to him, but who knew?
You could have been, yeah.
And so, but that I guess you say proud, even though it's Pasadena. I'm not from Pasadena, but it's LA. There's something in the air, in the sonics, that just sounds as much like LA as anything. And of course, Satisfaction was recorded on Sunset Strip. That has a bit of an LA sound to me because of that room it was in, RCA right on Sunset Strip. But Van Halen just epitomized everything of that time. And their songs were great. And that was truly a game changer because every song was great on that first album. What is it? Everybody Wants Some and Running with the Devil. You heard that in the
yeah, Everybody Wants Some was from Women and Children First, but on the first one, it's Ain't Talking About Love, Running with the Devil, You Really Got
Jamie's
Me.
Crying.
Jamie's Crying. Eruption.
Eruption and You Really Got Me. They took a Kink song and just blew it through the stratosphere.
Yeah.
And that was just unbelievable. So
Ice Cream Man. Right. But the California thing too is it has the Beach Boys harmony kind of vibe to it as well.
I think that's David Lee more than, but it's all chemistry. But that Eddie was just there to, it wouldn't even matter if he came around now, he could probably change the face. He was that kind of, he's a generational talent. I mean, that's a 100-year game changer. And so that's in the pantheon for me. But that's his LA. You want to say the Beach Boys, the Doors, Van Halen is just as bad. And like I said in the book, that is it's when I hear Mean Streets, I smell the exhaust of Hollywood Boulevard.
What a song, man, from Fair Warning.
Yeah. Unchained. And they had a sense of humor, put the seat back.
Yes.
One break coming up. I mean, they had a sense of humor. That's Ted Templeton, by the way.
Templeman, yes. Templeman.
He's in the book because
the Doobie Brothers.
Well, the Doobie Brothers story is me and Moxie, when we had nothing to do, would take the bus up to Farmers Market and then we'd go into CBS. So after we tool around the sets in CBS, as I just detail in the book, we'd go next door to Farmers Market, which is just a bunch of stalls and food and shops and all that. We, go in the magic store and have a little magic by making a few items disappear. But one day was our adventure for the afternoon is we were going to can I say that?
Sure.
People. And we put on these dreadful British accents. Now, we're like 15 years old, right? So, and we don't want to sit at the empty table. We go where there's somebody there so we can practice this is just what we did for fun, is BS people. But we didn't do it maliciously. We did just for fun. But we BS this lady, Lynn Wilson, and she loved us. We were so charming that she said, would you like to go to a recording session? And we're like, sure, we're going to be in town for another week, whatever. So she gave us her card. Unlike us, she wasn't full of crap. And we trekked out from West LA to the Valley on buses on a cornea cooking day where the smog was so bad. And we just saw this unknown band rehearse. A guy named Ted was behind the glass. And these guys working on this one riff, and they were, this was not a party like I experienced when I worked at the record plant, and that was later. This was just hard work. And after about 5 or 6 hours, they said, okay, we're going to we're going to do a closed set. Actually, before they kicked us out, is asked us to go get some sunflower seeds. This was the big party combustible for the band, sunflower seeds. So you guys could just get some sunflower seeds? And they said, yeah, we bought it was like 50 cents. Go back, we said it was 50 cents. They said, well, we'll pay you back when we're rich and famous, right? Nobody heard of this band. We didn't hear of it. And so after a while, it was closed session. We left, went back. And the song they were working on was Listen to the Music.
Oh.
It turned out to be the Doobie Brothers. And then, not to spoiler alert, but later in the book, when they played a benefit for $100 a plate in Century City at the Century Plaza Hotel, we knew the Century Plaza really well from the back rooms and made up. We didn't pay. We walked in, and there was the band, and they remembered us, and we're like,
"Wow,
where's the 50 cents for the sunflower seeds?" They're like, "Oh,
wow, what a great story!"
That was our adventures. We're just going to BS people today. So that's an idea of what we were like, because you had to make your own entertainment. There wasn't an internet to be fixated with all day long.
Sure. Like you say, act like you've been there. Was that?
Act like you own the place.
Act like you own the place. Yeah, that's it.
Because in the cosmic picture, you do. I mean, what harm you? You're just a little kid, and you're just looking to have a few laughs.
Yeah.
Story to go home and say, so your parents could disparage you and tell you, who cares? What are you going to? You can become a lawyer or what?
Richard Lefkowitz is the author of Welcome to Fabulous Angeles, the Rock and Roll Adventures of a Wayward Westside Teen. Throughout the book, readers are experiencing the magic of Los Angeles, all the fun times, the great stories, the music, the celebrities, the adventures. But in chapter 21, it's titled Free Clinic. This is where we read about the dark side. You write about the shocking 1976 murder of actor Sal Mineo. And for listeners who may not know, Sal was best known for starring alongside James Dean in Rebel Without a Cause and was one of Hollywood's most recognizable young actors. His murder became a major story in Los Angeles. Why did that murder hit so close to home for you?
Literally, Eric, you're right, because it was close to home. And so that's like 8400 block of Holloway, right across from Tower Records. And we're 9,000 block of a street that LA's a grid. So the streets are laid out in order pretty much, with some exceptions. But so it wasn't very far away. The proximity of it really sent a chill up our spine, and the brutality of it. He was axed or knifed. And
yeah.
Manson murders were not that far off. I think they had happened shortly before, and those were not that far away either. So it's one thing. The crime in LA is, and maybe in a lot of places, sort of the same in New York and maybe in Boston, wherever, it's kind of localized. Where, okay, I remember 1965 we had the Watts riots, and I was 8, and it was scary, but it was in Watts. Okay, and it was 2 freeway and a half away. It wasn't that far, maybe 7 or 8 miles, but still there were a couple freeways away. But that was right in our stomping grounds, right across from Tower Records. The guy was knifed, and that street was very dark because no streetlights, and it was really scary. And coming off the Manson murders, which was horrifying, the cold-blooded brutality of these guys who scared us all. So it was kind of like a terroristic act, and it had to do with, because it was right in the middle of our stomping grounds.
So you were, I think was it an apartment complex or a condo complex, right? It was in the back parking area where Sal Mineo was.
Yeah. So
did he live in that unit, or was he visiting somebody there? I can't recall.
I think he might have lived there.
Okay. Cause he came upon a robbery and he went to this person like, hey, what are you doing? And confronted him. And then the person stabbed him.
It took years to unwind that. I'm not even sure, and there's always conspiracy theories now proliferating on the internet, but I'm not even sure that they got the story straight, because it took them so long to solve that murder.
Really?
But he was young, and he was, a macho guy. I mean, this is Sal Mineo. You didn't expect him to get stabbed, and then there's all the rumors about sexuality or weird things in Hollywood. But it's in the book because it fits, and also to portray the fear we felt in the suburbs. But also, that's the Sunset Strip. Mickey Cohen had his hat shop, which was really a bookie salon. The Rainbow used to be Villanova, where there are all kinds of nefarious activities. There was a shooting the place next door, Gazzari's teen dance club with Sherry's, where there was a shooting with these gangsters. I mean, it's a strip. In fact, the title of the book, which is a nod to obviously the sign in Vegas, is because the only reason there's something called the Las Vegas Strip is because the police, and it was an unincorporated area. The city of West Hollywood didn't become a city until the 80s. So what happened is when the heat came down on the gamblers and the mobsters on the Sunset Strip in the 40s and 50s, they moved to the desert where it was lawless. So you had all kinds of backroom gambling and prostitution, sex work, and violence all over the Strip. And I saw it a little bit, the tail end of it, in my lifetime. And in those days, the Strip had, Dean Martin had his restaurant, and Rodney Binghammer had his place. He's a disc jockey who catered. It was this British cafe with all the very young girls. And even when Zeppelin was here, not to speak out of school about one of the greatest bands of all time, but those girls were young. And that wouldn't happen these days. And I don't mean 18 young or 17 young. I mean young. But okay, I'm not even going to say more about that. I'll get in trouble, right? But there was all kinds of crime on the Strip. And what happened is they moved to the middle of nowhere, 300 miles away, which you could get there in 4 or 5. There was a 1-lane highway, and most cars didn't have air conditioning. These bags, it was before my time. But still, I'm saying is that you could get there, and it was lawless. So the mob moved their headquarters to Las Vegas, and they called what was the LA highway the Strip after the LA Strip, the Sunset Strip. So crime has been endemic to the Sunset Strip. It's in the DNA of the Sunset Strip from the beginning.
Thanks so much for checking out the Booked on Rock podcast. If you've just found the podcast, welcome. If you've been listening, thank you so much for your support. And make sure you tell a friend, a family member, share on social media, and let people know about Booked on Rock. And if you do like the podcast, make sure you subscribe, give a 5-star review wherever you listen to the Booked on Rock podcast. We're on Amazon, Apple, iHeart, Spotify, Spreaker, TuneIn, and on YouTube Music. You can check out the full episodes on video, along with video highlights from episodes on the Booked on Rock YouTube channel. Find it at Booked on Rock. Thanks again for listening. Now back to the show. All right, let's get to Amy. Some readers might expect the book to be primarily about rock and roll, but relationships like the one with Amy provides the emotional heart of the book. Tell us about Amy. Why was it important to include that side of the story?
It's coming of age, first love, infatuation, but there was a depth to Amy that needed to be seen. And as probably one of maybe the biggest part of growing up is that first romance. And especially when you're in a difficult situation with your parents, where you have the overbearing, sort of stereotypical Jewish mother who's shaming you when she's not over loving you, and telling you she knows better than you, and maybe she's right a lot of the time, maybe she's right most of the time, but she can't be right all the time, and you feel trapped. And then the music comes along to free you, and then you find your first love, and it cut very deep. And as Cat Stevens and later Rod Stewart saying about that first cut being the deepest. So I think that's a universal tale that's irrespective of time and space. And while this may be I call it a memoir more than a memoir, the metroir about a city, or a memoir about you and the culture more than just me. I think the heartbeat of it, as you said, is really the interaction between young lovers and what that's like. And so many great books have been written, and it's one of my favorite genres. And I just felt that Amy needed to speak in her own words. And you'll see that while I portray the dynamics of that and how it congealed and how it became unglued and everything happened in between, Amy's words speak, and her letters and the other things she said came from her. And when in the process of writing this, I asked for that help, and I didn't ask directly because she's long gone out of my life, but I called on the universe to say, help me. And again, it's all about the truth. What was it really like being young lovers? And I'm sitting here casting judgment on Led Zeppelin, and she was 14 when we met, and I was 16. She turned 15 immediately, but still 15. And we were young lovers, and I was 17, she was 15, 1974. So I just had to portray the truth of that. And it was very different in some ways because the culture was different and it was all about the music. And I think the drugs were the undoing as it was for everything else. And that's why part of the reason why the whole generation failed. But a lot of that's universal too.
Sure. And you're also at that age that we're at when you're starting to think about the big picture of life. And that's where we get to chapter 7. There's an entry in there that really struck me. And you write, quote, "I thought of myself in celestial terms. I didn't pray to dollar bill idols. I badly wanted to believe our spirits will ascend at the moment we depart this lifelong dream. I thought maybe when we're awake, we're imagining, and when we sleep, we're awake. At age 15, I wondered whether I could call death a heinous case of mistaken identity." The title of the book suggests, adventure, rock and roll, but passages like this reveal a much more introspective side. Was it important for readers to see that beneath all of the celebrity encounters and the escapades? There was a young man searching for answers about life.
Exactly, searching for identity, but searching for meaning. And maybe that pursuit still continues with a lot of us to this day. I've always been a seeker. And as Pete Townsend said, won't know what I'm after till the day that I die. But still, as that seeker, I've always sought the spirituality in everything. And as I was just hinting at, the whole culture failed in a sense. The dreams were never realized. And Lenin said he wanted to see the plan for the revolution and the evolution. And we never had the plan. It was all just flower power fantasies. But for me, any book that was written by a guy named Swami, I would buy it. And we used to have a great spiritual bookstore up in Hollywood called the Bodhi Tree. And that's in the book. And go have a cup of tea and smell the incense and and that's what the culture was. And that's why I say nostalgia is wonderful. If the Stanford Institute of Longevity says it's healthy, I'm in, but it has to be more than that for me. What can we get? As a time capsule, when we dig it up, don't we want to learn something? Isn't that the whole point of the time capsule? It's great to be entertained. If there's levels, if somebody just wants to be entertained, if somebody's just for purely historical purposes, I feel really great that time and place has been preserved. Wonderful. But there's a deeper meaning for me, and I try to pass that along is, what are we here for? I say on that somewhere, one of those pages that you just read, that if you believe in nothing, how do you get out of bed in the morning? This is it, and we're just killing time. Woody Allen says it's all just a big distraction. We're all just trying to distract ourselves. And he's right to a large extent. And that's the way he's lived his life. And God bless him. He's 50 movies and all kinds of other things other than whatever more morality that people can talk about. But just saying, for me as a seeker, it is one of the most important components. And that thread goes all the way through the very last words on the very last pages, the spirituality of it. And that is what I like to bring into the present day is how do we get back the hope and the optimism that we felt when we saw Tomorrowland at Disneyland or that theme building at LAX that looked like a spaceship, or all the stuff that the color psychedelia. Yeah, a lot of it was drugs, a lot of it was a waste of time, and it's a revolving door that just goes around. But there was truth to it, and we need it more than ever in the present day, Eric. I really believe that.
Yeah, and the last chapter is so powerful. You're 21, decade's about to end. You're on a plane. You're writing on an aircraft safety card, essentially about where you've been, where you are, and where you're going. Can you take us to that moment there? You're looking out the window, and what's happening in your life at that moment of reflection?
Moment of clarity that I said I have to quit partying. And the truth is I didn't stopped doing all that stuff for another. I was 79. I didn't stop doing that stuff for 20 more years. And partly, I didn't do hard drugs anymore after the 80s, but still I drank, I smoked weed pretty much in the 80s, 90s, all kinds of stuff. But it's a kind of a full circle thing is that, okay, it comes right off of the ending, the chapter you're talking about is right after I just partied with Keith and Ronnie intimately, where we had great conversations while we're slugging a bottle of Jack Daniels together on a drum riser. These things were life-changing for me. And I just flunked out of college because that was my passive aggressive. I didn't want to be there, so I just won't go.
There's a Jackson Brown. You mentioned something about that too. We become the person we choose to be. Right? Is that the song "The Fuse"?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and that's the Fuse is a song that is a theme of a scene when I move out to school in my last days before I get uninvited back after being academic, put on double secret probation and kicked out. And so that was,
Animal House reference. Got it.
yeah, well, to me, that was a philosophy. I
0.0.
start drinking heavily. That was like my mission statement for life. So
Right.
if Pluto could say that, it's funny, at the end, he becomes a senator, right? And that's pretty much that, right?
Yeah.
So the salvation, it was so meaningful to me to meet these houses because I'm getting kicked out of school. My parents think I'm just going dead end and I have no future because I don't want to do what I'm supposed to do and go to law school and all that. But I've just spent every night with Keith and Ronnie and all these other great things that to me are validation. And then we go to Hawaii and have that experience, but on the way back, it hits me like, wait a minute. I am not going to listen to anybody else. I got to listen to the heartstrings that are vibrating inside my soul. And so that's kind of that moment. And it's kind of a cliffhanger in a sense that it's leading to the sequel, which is pretty much in pretty good shape, already written.
Oh,
and
cool.
there's some Easter eggs in there that I couldn't let it it had to have some closure, but really, again, it's the spiritual circle of things. And that's where, and it was all about the music. And what I say there is that you've got Dylan Thomas talking about the force that fuses the flower through his famous poem. And I said that wrong.
No,
Sorry, Dylan.
I have it here, right? It's the force. Yeah. So, right. You were right. I pledged there and then to germinate the holy seed planted by what Dylan Thomas called the force that through the green fuse drives the flower. And
then the fuse is Jackson Browne, and he's from LA basically his whole life. I think he might have been born on an army base in Germany, but he's an LA guy. His songs are all LA. He's another on that short list of real LA, authentic truth and art. And Dylan Thomas is, what was he, Welsh? But the truth is the truth, and that's the story I'm trying to tell.
The Booked on Rock podcast is part of the Boneless Podcasting Network. If you're a fan of classic rock and classic film like I am, go to boneless.lovable.app to find over 20 great shows there. That's boneless.lovable.app, or just go to bookedonrock.com, the Boneless Podcasting Network. It is what you want it to be. Listen with confidence. So the next one will be based on the 80s?
But yeah, I think there's a lot to be left in the 70s. And of course, to me, the 70s ended on December 7th, 1980, when John Lennon was assassinated, even though it was 1980. And there's a lot to be said. And there was a lot that this story more is a family dysfunctional thing, and the Amy story and the best friend thing. The next thing, a little deeper dive into the psychology and into some of the events that happened. Yeah, the 80s, sure. And up through my personal journey, healing and sobriety and my own artistic satisfactions or whatever it may be. But it's always about the city. It's not, it's a memoir that I don't even like to say is about me. Of course it is, but it's the same elements that are incorporated into the first one will be there. But that's a discussion for another day. For today, I'm glad that I picked up on the fact that, I'm trying to send a deeper message than just the music was good, we had fun, we had sex, and we partied with the Stones. I mean, that's all nice, but what does it all mean? Without giving away too much, what became of Moxie? I try to stay away from the spoiler alerts. I'll tell you this. I have no problem telling you. He's safe and healthy, alive and well, and doing great. Okay, good. You're still connected? You guys are still connected? Still? We'll always be connected. When we shed this mortal coil, we'll probably still be connected in the afterlife. But yes, we are still connected deeply, and it doesn't mean we hang out every day or see each other, but as friends you have for a long time, you go through all kinds of various stages. So yeah, he's alive and well. That is good to hear. All right, last question. If you could sit down with the teenage Ricky that we meet in these chapters, what's the one thing you'd want him to understand about where his adventures were leading if you could go back in time? Would you warn him, or would you say, go for it, kid? Live it, learn. I've had that thought many times. And of course, you can't, it's like if you went in a time machine and you changed one thing, it would change the entire civilization because of that one plant that didn't grow on those, whatever it may be. So, but if we're going to have the willing suspension of disbelief for that, I would say the one thing I would tell myself is trust yourself and your truth and your process, and your parents, have compassion for them. I wouldn't have wanted to grow up with my parents' parents as they were great grandparents, but as parents, things were very different growing up during the Depression, and they lived a very different life full of all kinds of suffering, whether it was economic or whether self-inflicted, whatever it may be. It was a different time to grow up in World War II and to face the challenges that we no longer face. They had to just survive, whereas I wasn't born wealthy, but I didn't have to worry about I was going to starve to death either. So, but the one thing I would tell myself is have compassion for them. They're doing their best, as people like to say. And even if they're not, even if they're doing their worst, they're your parents. At the end of the day, they love you and they want the best for you, but they are completely full of shit. They don't know what they're talking about. You could get the hell out of that house as soon as possible.
On that note, welcome to Fabulous Angeles, the rock and roll adventures of a wayward Westside teen. What a fun read, man. It's out now. It's been out for a little while, and it's wherever books are sold. You can find it online or look for it at your nearest bookstore. And if you want to look for it at your nearest independent bookstore, booktownrock.com is where you can find one, your nearest one. And where can people find you online?
Thank you for asking. It's fabulous, funnily enough, fabulousangeles.com. Got the website loaded with all types of content and reviews and musings, blog, and some links and some other interesting things about the book. Some excerpts up there for anybody who's interested. But I want to thank you, Eric, for having me on and for the wonderful job you do for the country, for society, the world at large, getting people plugged in. We're in a golden age of, maybe we're even a little over the edge of the golden age of rock star and other type of musical biographies. When I grew up, there were none. There were people still living their dreams. And then Keith wrote that book, Life. And then the floodgates exploded.
Yes.
And it's a wonderful thing to get people engaged literarily. So I thank you for that. And thank you for having me on, Eric.
Thanks so much, Richard. I appreciate that. Richard Lefkowitz. Have a great night. And thank you again for the book. And we look forward to that next one. We'll have you back on.
Thanks, Eric. Be well.
That's it. It's in the books.